What's up, guys? JT Anime Nerd here, bringing you all that nerdy goodness. Today I'm going to be giving my spoiler review for DC's newest movie, Blue Beetle. Now, I want to make it clear that I don't pay to see these movies because after the whole Henry Cavill return and unfair canning thing, I am in a boycotting position with DC films as a whole and will not be spending a single cent on these movies. I support the cast and crew that worked on these movies, but I will not support the disrespectful company that they work for. I've got a friend who pays for my ticket whenever we go see a DC movie in theaters. So with that explained, let's get to the review. Let's start out with the name himself, Blue Beetle, aka Jaime Reyes. I loved Solo Maridueña as Jaime Reyes. Shout out to him. I love him as Blue Beetle, and I even love him in Cobra Kai. I'm still waiting for that final season, but of course, the actors and writers have to strike back against Hollywood. So shout out to them, and may they win the fight. Alright, now Jaime Reyes was freaking great. I love the whole family aspect, even the fact that he doesn't have to hide his identity from his family like all cliche superhero films, movies. Although I can't say the same for the grandma, I don't know what that was about, but Granny got some explaining to do. Anyway, Jaime's story was what one would consider generic, but I felt it was done in an incredible way. Jaime came back from graduating at Gotham, but comes back to find out his family's struggling and his father apparently suffered from a heart attack. This would, of course, come back to haunt him later, and that his family are on the verge of losing the house. So, despite his hard work, Jaime's graduation didn't really change anything for them, pretty much due to the fact that he comes from a low income home. Now, before I continue on with the story and characters, I have to give a shout out to the Latino representation in this movie. Now, I know I haven't mentioned this in any of my videos, but I am Puerto Rican, so I know what it's like to grow up in a Spanish family. I admit I'm not the closest to my roots, mainly because, as despite I being Puerto Rican, I do not speak Spanish. I only know English. However, I am around my family enough to recognize my Spanish roots, such as as my grandma being obsessed with soap operas. My grandmother's the same way. Traditional Spanish foods for us it's rice and beans, plantains, fish fritters, and of course the religious aspect. Although that's a can of worms I really don't want to open. Moving on. I do want to give a shout out to George Lopez. I think I have not heard his comedy in a long time. I grew up watching the George Lopez show, and oh my god, the comedy he gives in this movie really brought me back to those days, and I just loved him. He was my favorite member of the family aside from the grandma in this movie. He was just so hilarious. Now, continuing from Jaime's story, now Jaime's real battle in this whole story is basically protecting his family. What I believe makes this movie the best is that they portray for Jaime what it's like when you fail to protect your family. Like many other superhero stories, Jaime loses a loved one, that being his father, from a heart attack due to the stress of being attacked by the antagonist of the movie, Victoria Cord, who I'm just gonna mention now is just your run-of-the-mill evil business tycoon who just wants to create weapons. There is this mention that her brother Ted Cord, the second Blue Beetle, was picked over her to take over the company from their grandfather because she was a woman, but they don't get more into it than that. But getting back on track, despite this loss, Jaime's father's death inspires him to embrace his role as the Blue Beetle. And when it comes to the Scarab, it felt more like Vision from Iron Man. It was just an AI voice capable of growing as a person. So not too unique, unlike in its comic version where Jaime can just kind of know what it's thinking. I also want to give props to that horrific transformation scene. I was afraid it wasn't going to be as disgusting and creepy as it was in the comics, or at least as it was implied in the comics. But it luckily was, and the no clothes after every transformation thing was a hilarious touch. At the end of the day, Jaime saves the day, gets the girl, and things begin to get better for his family. It has been confirmed by James Gunn himself, though I don't really trust him too much, that Jaime will continue on going forward as the Blue Beetle. I just hope they can actually stick to that, whether or not the universe is softly rebooted, or they eventually give in and decide to continue Snyder's original story. Now let's talk about the villain Conrad Karapaks, whose birth name is actually Ignacio as revealed in the movie. Despite feeling like your typical everyday misunderstood villain, there is actually a compelling story with him, which proves that he was and is redeemable in a way. Carapax was ultimately used to become the prototype of the OMAC, a weaponized cybernetic armor that Victoria Cord wanted to develop using the Scarab's code. Once they do get their hands on the code, Carapax's armor becomes comic accurate. By the end of the battle he has with Blue Beetle, the Scarab shows Jaime Carapax's memory, so he'll realize that Carapax doesn't have to be killed. It's revealed that either Victoria Cord or a jet of an opposing faction killed Carapax's mother in an airstrike, leading Carapax to be kidnapped and forced into becoming a child soldier, or possibly for Victoria's army. After surviving an accident, he would then be used as a test for a prototype OMAC. Ever since then, he'd be Victoria Cord's bodyguard, but after the final battle with Blue Beetle, he would finally remember how much his family mattered to him, which was his mother. This in turn would cause him to decide to destroy himself and Victoria via self-destruction in an attempt to make things right, and in a way, return to his mother, who he hears calling out to him. I gotta say, when it comes to villain moments, this is actually one of my favorite. Even though it's cliche, it was executed incredibly in my opinion. Now, the final thing I'm going to talk about is the legacy aspect, in which the main hero actually inherited his role as a hero from the hero that existed before him. I said hero too much, didn't I? Anyway, when it comes to the when it comes to the subtle inclusion of the previous Blue Beetles, that being Dan Garrett and Ted Cord, and I actually really love of the world building they did. It was pretty passive to keep to the main narrative, but well executed in my opinion. Even the mid-credits scene revealed that Ted Cord was still alive, paving the way for the future of the Blue Beetle's story. Whether it'll be in a sequel or crossover movie, I think I'm at least gonna be happy with it. That is, if James Gunn doesn't ruin it for everyone. At the end of the day, Blue Beetle is your typical superhero cliche story of fun. To the point where actually believe it's epic, not just enjoyable. Epic, which is what I believe has been DC Films' biggest problem. But I'm happy to say that despite the cliches, this movie surprised me in a positive way. It's just too bad that we all know it's not gonna do good at the box office because of WBD's screw-ups. We can only wish the cast and crew the best. If you guys like this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and put down in the comment section below on what you guys thought about this movie. Also, if you're a fan of the Snyderverse, then check out my announcement for a new set of videos I plan to make on how I would have handled and continued Zack Snyder's story. With all that said and done, I'm JT Anime. I'll catch you guys later, and hashtag restore the Snyderverse.